I think one of the biggest misconceptions about raid tiers is when guilds actually start to struggle. Most people think the hard part comes later, when you're deep into progression, when bosses get difficult, and when fatigue starts to set in. But in reality, most guilds don't fall apart at the end of a tier, they start to fall apart at the beginning. How's it going, guys? I'm Abysmal, and I'm the guild master and raid leader for Two Night Mythic Raiding Guild in World of Warcraft. On this channel, I talk about the systems behind running stable raiding guilds, such as roster building, recruitment, benching, and that kind of thing. So, those first couple of weeks set the tone for everything that comes after. Not just in terms of progress, but in terms of expectations, morale, and how the guild actually functions under pressure. And the tricky part is, it doesn't feel dangerous at the time. Week 1 usually feels good, everyone's excited, people are logging in early, staying late, talking in between pools, just the general energy is high. Even wipes feel fine because everything's new. But underneath that, you're already setting patterns, how you communicate, how you handle mistakes, how you make decisions, and how pressure, the amount of pressure that you put on people. And those patterns stick a lot longer than people realise. One of the biggest things that can go wrong early is expectations. A lot of guilds go into a tier with a general idea of what they want, but they don't actually say it clearly. Are you pushing hard early? Are you taking a more relaxed approach? Are you aiming for a specific pace? Are you okay with wipes? Are you expecting clean execution quickly? If those things aren't clearly set, players fill in the gaps themselves, and usually they don't all fill in them in the same way. So you end up with players treating it casually and others treating it like every pull matters. That mismatch creates tension really quickly, and it doesn't always show up as conflict. Sometimes it's just frustration, shorter patience, or less communication. And once that starts, it becomes harder to reset later. Another thing that tends to happen early is OverPushing. You get a bit of early success, kill a few bosses, things are feeling good, progress is happening fast. So the natural reaction is to push harder, more pools, longer sessions, higher expectations, over time, as such. And sometimes that works, but sometimes it pushes the guild past what it can realistically sustain, and people get tired earlier than expected, mistakes start to creep in, frustration builds faster. And suddenly, the atmosphere shifts. What felt exciting in week 1 starts to feel heavy in week 2 and 3. So one of the most important things early in a tier is pacing. Not just how much you raid, but how much pressure you apply to your raid team. Because you don't need to max everything out in week 1, you need to build something that lasts. Another area that causes issues early is roster decisions. At the start of a tier, everything feels flexible, people are trying things out, rotations aren't fully settled. But the decisions you make here matter more than they may seem. Who you bring consistently, who gets rotated, who gets sat. Even if those decisions are correct, if they aren't handled correctly, they create uncertainty. And uncertainty early in a tier spreads quickly. Players start asking themselves, am I part of this team long term? Do I need to prove something? Where do I actually stand? And if you don't answer those questions early, players will answer them themselves. So even simple communication helps. Things such as, this is how we're rotating right now. This is what we're looking for. This is temporary while we figure things out. All of these forms of communication really help reduce a lot of unnecessary tension. Another thing that becomes really important early is how you handle mistakes. In week 1, mistakes are expected, everything is new. No one really knows the fight yet. You can do tons and tons of research and prep, but until you're actually there pulling the boss, you don't have a full picture yet of how the encounter works. But how you react to those mistakes sets the tone. If the environment feels safe to make mistakes and learn, people improve faster generally. If mistakes feel punished or highlighted too heavily, people start playing more cautiously or reluctant to own up to mistakes. And that's a big red flag right there. And cautious play isn't always better play. It often leads to hesitation, less confidence, and overall less communication. So the goal early on isn't perfect play, it's building an environment where people can get better quickly. And that comes from how mistakes are handled, not just how often they happen. There's also something else that starts to show up around week 2 or 3, and that's a drop in energy. Week 1 energy is always high, people are excited, motivated, fully engaged, but that doesn't last forever. And when it does start to dip, That's where guilds either stabilise or start to struggle. If everything has been built on intensity, it's hard to maintain. If things have been more controlled and consistent, it's easier to carry forward. So early on, you're not just thinking about progress, you're thinking about sustainability. Can this pace continue? Can this environment hold? Because if it can't, you'll feel it very quickly. And finally, I think one of the most important things in the early weeks is direction. Players don't just want to kill bosses, they want to feel like the guild is improving. Cleaner pools, better coordination, more consistency. Even small signs of progress matter because they show that the group is moving forward, not just repeating attempts. If that feeling is missing, things start to feel stagnant very quickly. And stagnation early in a tier is a bad sign, because it usually leads to frustration later. At the end of the day, those first few weeks aren't just about getting through bosses, they're about setting the foundation for everything that comes after. How your guild communicates, how it handles pressure, how it makes decisions, and how it deals with mistakes. All of that gets shaped early, and once those patterns are in place, they're very hard to change mid-tier. So if there's one thing to focus on, it's being intentional early. Not perfect, not over-optimized, just intentional. Because the guilds that get through a tier cleanly aren't the ones that push hardest in week 1. They're the ones that build the right habits early and carry them all the way through. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video or could take some information away from this that you can implement into your own guild. Here's a question for the raid leaders and guild masters or officers out there. What's been the biggest challenge for your guild in these first few weeks of the tier? Let me know down in the comments below. Don't forget to leave a like or subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.